Brad Williams, Frugal Finance, an interest rate swap as a portfolio of forward rate agreements as opposed to forward rate notes. In this section, we analyze an interest rate swap in terms of a portfolio of interest rate forward contracts. In the interest rate market, these forward contracts are known as forward rate agreements. We briefly review the key features of FRAs here before showing how an interest rate swap can be analyzed as a portfolio of forward rate agreements. Key features of FRAs. An FRA or forward rate agreement typically involves an arrangement where parties agree to exchange SOFR at a specified features date in exchange for payment determined by a fixed interest rate established on the date of the contract. For example, consider an FRA market maker who agrees to pay 6 months SOFR in 6 months in exchange for a fixed interest payment in an annual rate of 5% and a notional principal of $20 million. When the determination date of the FRA arrives, assume that SOFR stands at 5.8%. Payments on the FRA would be the interest rate times the fraction of the year times the notional principal received fixed 0.05 times half year times 20 million equals 500,000. Pay floating 0.058 times 0.5 times 20 million. Net payment 0.58, 80,000. K should be this minus this. Should be 80,000. In this case, the market maker would be obligated to pay a net payment of 80,000. In essence, this FRA agreement is a one-date swap agreement. Therefore, we may analyze an interest rate swap agreement as a sequence of forward rate agreements. FRA are quoted in the following manner: term to expiration in months times term to end of period covered by agreement. For an example, the FRA we considered above with 6 months to expiration for 6 months SOFR would be quoted as 6 by 12, 5%. First number indicates the months until the FRA expires. The second indicates the number of months until the instrument presumed to underlie the FRA matures, while the difference between the two numbers show the maturity of the presumed underlying instrument. There's no actual instrument that is delivered. Instead, the presumed underlying instrument is simply an instrument of the underlying maturity that pays SOFR. Instead of exchanging instruments, the profit or loss is settled in cash, as in our preceding example. The 5% is the fixed rate of interest or loss to be paid in exchange for SOFR. FARs are normally determined in advance and settled in arrears. In our example of the 6 by 12 forward rate agreement, the determination date would be at month 6. The actual payment would be month 12. On-market and off-market FRAs. As we have seen, FRA market makers offer to make a market and forward rate agreements for a variety of maturities at stated rates. An FRA agreement entered at the prevailing market determined rate is an on-market FRA. For the example we have just been considering, the on-market rate for a 6-month FRA with a determination date in 6 months and a payment date in 12 months would be 5%. Entering an on-market FRA is costless, as it is simply a forward contract initiated at the prevailing rate. An off-market FRA is an FRA entered at a rate that differs from the prevailing market determined rate. Because the term for an off-market FRA differs from those prevailing in the market, payment is required to enter the FRA. For example, let us assume that the prevailing rate on an FRA is 6 by 12 by 5%. An off-market received fixed FRA for this period is entered at a rate of 7% with a notional principal of $10 million. For this agreement, the on-market rate is 5%, so the on-market fixed payments would be 0.05 times half times 10 million is equal to 250,000. While the off-market fixed payment would be 0.07 times 1/2 times 10 million equals 350,000. 0.07 minus 0.05 times 1/2 times 10,000 equals 100 grand. Both payments would occur in 1 year at month 12, and both the FRA calls for the same dollar payment on the floating side. From this example, it is clear that entering the off-market received fixed FRA will pay 100 grand more than the on-market FRA in 1 year. Therefore, the received fixed off-market FRA will require the payment of the present value of the 100 grand when the FRA is initiated, or the payment of 100 grand at month 12. As we now show, off-market FRAs play a critical role in analyzing an interest rate swap as a portfolio of FRAs. The question is, why would you initiate something like this? Comment. Brad Williams, Frugal Finance. Thanks for watching.